Hi guys, welcome to another episode. First episode we talked about the Land Rover itself and what we've done to it in the past, and now what we're going to have a look at is what we need to do to it to bring it up to the standard we want for our life in retirement when we're on the road. Obviously that's a little bit of a way, kind of be a staged approach. Thinking back, what we need to do is a bit of planning and preparation, because that will prevent piss poor performance.
Gentlemen, this is a story that you will tell your grandchildren, and mightily bored they'll be.
So here we've got a list
The plan
that we're going to go through and have a look at, and then we'll understand what we need to do to get this on the road. So let's go.
Hi, we're Nick and Joe, and we're on a journey to retirement and a life of full-time travel. Overlanding is our passion, and we've driven and owned a succession of Land Rovers over the last 40 years. For the last 20 years, our Project Land Rover has been our mercurial 1989 110 station wagon. It's been a family car, occasional overlander and demanding companion. Come along with us and our perfectly imperfect Land Rover as we get ready to hit the road for full-time travel.
One of the things we need to consider when we're building out or kitting out the Land Rover in terms of fixtures and fittings, it's not just the stuff we want to use on a daily basis, but maybe a modular approach. There's a lot of stuff here that I perhaps wouldn't carry, if I'm just going away for a weekend in the UK. But if I'm going on a longer trip, I may need to accommodate this stuff. So in my planning, I've had to consider how I'm going to integrate this or how I'm going to carry this when I need to carry it. It's kind of a golf bag approach. We take the stuff out of the bag and use it when we need to use it. We don't necessarily have to carry it all the time. Okay, let's go and have a look at the Land Rover. So I'm going to work from the front to the back of the Land Rover and talk about each thing in turn. Now, like any good plan, it's all written down. Joe didn't write this one down. It's the first list I've ever had that I've written myself. So that's an achievement on its own. But we're going to go into it now, and I'm going to try and say okay as little as possible, because I say it too much. Okay. Right, front. Okay, what we want to talk about is recovery. At the moment, I don't have a winch. I don't need a winch when I'm using this on a day-to-day basis. I have recovery points and I can use that. If I wanted to go a little bit further, I could use my high lift jack as a winch. The key thing to remember about recovery is don't get in a situation where you need to be recovered, and that will save you 9 times out of 10. However, I've got to appreciate further down the line, when we're a bit more adventurous, we may need a winch. So I've got to think about what type of winch and how I'm going to mount it. So it's not just a winch, it's going to need a winch bumper and all the electrics and everything else that go with it. Okay, but that is a long-term aspiration. That's not something we're going to do now. I don't really need it at the moment. Storage is another good one. Okay, so a lot of people put to good use the bonnet of the Land Rover for storage. I do want some storage on there. I don't think I want it for day-to-day use. I don't want to use it all the time, but I do occasionally need to have the ability to hoist something on the front. Okay, if I've got some wet kit, chairs, something like that, logs, anything, I need to be able to put that on the front to use that space up. So what are my options? I could use a bonnet bag. It's great, designer, fits onto the bonnet, but costs a lot of money. Still an option. I could use something like a Wimmick front cradle, okay, that sits on the front, like a hoop basket that sits where the spare wheel carrier goes, and I could throw stuff in that. Or I could do something a bit more home built and build something that goes onto the bonnet, and then I utilise that with cargo straps or something like that to hold my load down, maybe a small cargo net or something like that. So a bit of thought's got to go into that, but we do need some sort of bonnet storage to help us out. Upgrades. Okay, it's not much you can really upgrade on a bonnet. One of the upgrades I'm going to make is I'm going to put a snow cowl on the heater intake. Okay, it's not just a fashion accessory. A snow cowl will stop water, snow, dirt and dust from getting down there into the heater. Okay, obviously the heaters are poor enough on a Land Rover as it is, so anything that's going to stop it getting damp inside the heater matrix will help us from stopping it mist up in front of the Land Rover. So that's a good reason of having a snow cowl. It's a fairly, unless you buy the actual metal military one, if you buy one of the plastic copies, okay, it is a really useful upgrade for when you're overlanding. The windscreen, or the windscreen rubber, has been perished over time, and it's been rotting away for a long time, to the extent that I've had to kind of fix it in there with some sort of mastic to try and keep the water out. It's got to the point where that doesn't work anymore. I've got a new windscreen rubber, but what I've got to do is G myself up to get in there get the screen out and get the new one in. Why have I got to gin myself up? Because the only time I've done it before, I cracked a windscreen putting it in. But that's something we need to do. The snorkel itself is great, but when I fitted it, it was a little bit of a rush job. I've kind of got holes in the wrong place to start with. I've got some holes that need filling in, and also the metal mounts are starting to rust up and things like that, so we need to get in there and do a bit of preservation on that to get that going a bit better, just to tidying it up really. Lighting, a bizarre thing to say about Land Rovers, but I'm fairly happy with the lighting I've got now for on-road, with the spotlights and the small light bar. All works very well. However, one of the things I have found when I'm off-road is the difficulty of seeing, particularly on the driver's side, into the area where your wheel is coming up against the side of the track. Okay, going down some quite twisty tracks in Italy on one of our trips, it was quite difficult at night to correlate between the edge of the track and where the ditch is, or the wood line is, and where the actual passage of the vehicle is going to be. So what we need to do is fit some ditch lights. So that's really just 2 little spotlights. A lot of people will fit them up on the light rack, but I'm not going to fit them up on the light rack for now because I really don't understand what's going on the roof of the Land Rover at the moment, and I'll come back to that throughout this video. Okay, but what I am going to do is get 2 small, one either side, and I'm going to mount them up here, possibly off the windscreen bracket, the windscreen mount, okay, to use that. So the light coming off there is giving me a good flood of light at the side of the vehicle, and that will help me driving off-road. Okay, I don't need a massive light bar at the moment. I can see pretty well what I've got on the front, which is limited and standard fairly, but I do need that extra confidence on either side so that we can navigate through those narrow tracks a bit more efficiently. Okay, moving on to the side of the vehicle. This is a strange thing to talk about, the side of the vehicle, but we're going to have a look at some of the areas we've got to work in on the vehicle. And almost tying into the front is the bulkhead. A bit of corrosion coming up there. It doesn't look too bad, but it needs to be operated on now to save it from getting worse further on. And also there's a fair bit of like probably some sort of reaction between old paint and the aluminium there, and that's on all the doors, and that's going to need looking at. The question is, you know, do we repaint the Land Rover? I kind of like it in its distressed manner, because wherever it goes it's going to get scratched and abused anyway. It needs to be looked at. Okay, one of the things that was picked up in the last MOT was the inner sills. There was a bit of rot in there to the extent that one of the seatbelt bolts had actually rusted through. It was literally just sat in the hole. So to get that through the MOT, we've had to replace the inner sill on this side. Inner sills generally come as a pair, so the corrosion is probably there on the other side as well. So I'm going to have to go in on the other side, replace that. But one of the issues that brought up, and maybe I should be covering this later on when I do chassis, but at the bottom of the A pillar, where it joins onto the inner sill, just behind the rock slider here, you've got a foot or a bracket that actually holds the bulkhead A pillar onto the bulkhead cross member, and also ties in with the inner sill, and that's what gives the rigidity to hold the body on. So when I was fitting the new inner sill, it's pretty corroded, pretty knackered, pretty damaged. Didn't get picked up on the MOT, but I know it's there and I need to replace that. Could be a little bit tricky, depends how they're actually fitted in, whether they're just bolted in or whether they've actually been welded into the A pillar, but we'll find out at some point. Let's go back around the other side. Next thing is access to what's inside. So this is the build we've got in here at the moment. I'm going to talk about electricals later on, but what I want to be is in a position where I can actually fold the doors out so they're 90 degrees and keep them locked out. So probably, like I've got on the back door, and I'll show you that in a bit maybe, is I've got a gas strut that actually helps to push the door out and then hold it in place. Why do I want that? Is I want to be able to pull my fridge outside so that when I'm cooking outside, I've got easy access to it. And also, hopefully, if I've relocated the electronics, I can have a drawer underneath that I can pull out as well. That's one of the things I want to look into, is how I'm going to either extend the stay, maybe, or put a gas strut in there so I can open it out. And it also reveals the horrible standard of the inners of my doors, which need a good look at. Not too bad, but they need a bit of restorative work there. Okay, access is another good point. Obviously, it's a station wagon. It's got the standard sliding windows, look good, rattle. This one's held in place with a bit of rubber to stop it vibrating around because it's quite noisy and rattly. What a lot of people do is replace those with gull wings, and that's the route I want to go down. But how am I going to do that? You know, if I buy the bespoke ones designed for Land Rovers, they're probably about £600 to £800. There may be some cheaper options, but for an aluminium or a glass one that opens up, lifts up on the gas struts, okay, so you've got direct access in and out. That's one option. Another option would be to fit perhaps a polycarbonate caravan style or RV style van window in there. Same thing, will come up on the gas strut, but it's just finding one that is the right size to fill the gap where the actual sliding window was. And finally, like so many things, the final option is DIY. Can I build an aluminium gull wing that fits in to this window on gas struts and has, enough P-seal behind it to keep the weather out? A bit of thinking there, but we will happen in some form or other. But to marry up with that, what we want is some form of drop-down table or shelf. I love to do cooking out here on the side of the Land Rover when I'm not working in the back. If I've got the awning out, we sat here with the chairs and the table. It's great to have a shelf there. Now, previously, I've probably brought a folding table with me, but this is all stuff that takes up space in the Land Rover. So if I can have something that's on the side that folds away, I can do that. I can, buy something bespoke or something that's designed to do the job. There are plenty of them out there on the market, or can I make one? But that's something I need to look at a little bit further down the line. And with the gull wing, one of the things we saw when we visited Amberley in the previous episode was somebody had made a gull wing. That's quite an interesting option. I'm going to use that perhaps as a template, which kind of shows you which way I'm looking at probably going down, because I'm a cheapskate and I've got a piece of aluminium, but I might use that as a canny design template for what I'm going to do. Okay, moving on to the driver's side. We saw before, some of the stuff out there, the jerry cans, the pelly case, stuff like that. How am I going to mount them? Now, at the moment, if they're empty, I'll throw them all up on the roof rack. But if I change this roof, or if I go for a pop top, I don't really want all that weight up there. I'm loath to carry them up there when they're full up as well. So I think what I'm going to do, and it's pretty standard here, lots of people do it, is fit some cargo track above and below the window, which may or may not still be there. It'll either be a gull wing or be filled in. Probably depends on what I'm doing internally, or if I've decided what top I'm going on, but we don't know what's going on with the top. Okay, and then we'll mount on there some foldable jerry can mounts, so that when we need to put jerry cans on, we can just drop them down and put jerry cans on. But I don't need to drive around with them all the time. I don't need to drive to work, for example, with 2 jerry cans and a pelly case on the side of the Land Rover. I'm not going to run out of water or fuel on a 25-mile trip to work, but I need to have the ability to put it on. And finally, the last bit I want to talk about is fitting a shower or a toilet tent. Now, we've had a few rudimentary attempts at this when we've been away, using the sides of the awning and stuff like that just to provide a cover, but not really to any great success. If you're going to stop and you want something you can fold out quickly, we need some sort of shower cubicle that sits or stays on the side of the vehicle so it's ready to deploy. I have got a little shower tent, but it sits in a box on top of the Land Rover, and really the effort that you go to get the tent out of the box on the top means you probably can't be bothered to do it, and you won't do it. Ideally, we want to come up with something that's mounted on the side of the vehicle. Now, you've probably got the hang of this by now. I can go and buy one, or I can make one. So guess which route I'm probably going down? I'm probably going to make one, and we'll see how that one turns out. The final part of the exterior, apart from the roof, but we'll talk about that later on. The rear of the vehicle. There is a few things to do here. One of the things is the lighting. It's a little bit archaic. It's as Land Rover fitted it, not really up to the job. I did speak about in a previous episode about I'm not a massive fan of LED lighting, but because I've got a box of light bulbs that I need to use up and a box of light fittings I need to use up as well. But I do need to replace it. If you look, you can spot the odd thing out that got me through an MOT. On one side, I've got an amber lens. On the other side, I've got a clear lens with an amber bulb. Both do the same things, but they're not very aesthetically pleasing, are they? We've got some lenses, some of the NAS ones. We're going to put those probably on the lower 2, so the indicators, the reversing light and the fog light. We'll probably keep the stop lights as standard. Who needs to know if we're stopping? Brakes are pretty ineffective on a Land Rover anyway, so you ain't going to slow down that fast. People will work out what you're trying to do before you actually get there. We'll replace all those. And once we replace them, we need to protect them. So we'll put some protective cases on those, which will kind of stop me, well, it won't stop me reversing into anything, but it'll stop me breaking them, hopefully, when I do reverse into them. On top of that, we need to look at the wiring. The wiring's pretty shoddy behind them. Various people have obviously, in the life of the vehicle, have extended them, shortened them, extended them, shortened them. And one of the problems that was causing me for the MOT was the wire was shorting out way back towards the chassis. So, we'll get in there, get the wire sorted out and do that at the same time. We need to tidy up the back. Am I in the market for a full respray? Probably not, who knows. But that looks pretty shoddy, that one. So I'll probably give them a light spray over just to make sure, make the panels better, along with the rear cross member. The rear cross member has been changed probably about 10 years ago. So you've probably got quarter chassis on there. So that's pretty sound, but it does need a bit of love and attention to bring it up to a good standard. One of the other things I love to have, I've got one step here, but to get up to the roof tent, I can get up onto the tyre in the rear, but if I'm wearing my tight trousers, I can't quite stretch that far. I need to put another step on here to help me step up so I can get onto the roof on this side. I have in the past carried a ladder, but I don't want to carry a ladder It's just something else to take on and off, so another little step there. And also what I need to do is mount the high lift. I don't carry high lifts all the time, you know, but again, you can use them not just for jacking the vehicle up to change a wheel. They're a great recovery tool as well if you know how to use them. A lot of people get them, don't know how to use them, and end up doing more damage to themselves and their vehicle and the jack rather than actually achieving anything beneficial out of them. But to carry it, I've got to work out where I can do it. Do I go, you know, for some sort of horizontal low mount, or can I do a vertical mount on this side or this side? But the problem is I'm probably going to foul on the wheel there, so I've got to do a bit of thinking about that. But again, I need to have it on there so I can carry it when I want to carry it, which I can't do at the moment because the way it's configured in the back, I can't even throw it in the back. It's too long now without putting it on the top and making the cushions dirty, which makes some people unhappy. What else needs to happen on the back? We need to do a bit of lighting on the back. If that's your reversing light, you aren't going to see a lot of night when you're going backwards. So what I will do, similar to the ditch lights, I'm going to put 2 small spots up there so that I can reverse with a bit of confidence. Not that I'm not going to run into anything. So 2 small lights, I'll either run them directly off the existing reversing cable circuit, or I'll wire them up into the front so I can switch them on and off. You know, I probably don't need to blind people when I'm out and about on a daily basis, but if I'm in some woods somewhere, yeah, I do want to see what's behind me, whether it's a ditch, a tree, a bush, a wall, or anything like that. So yeah, a bit of work to do there. So I hope you've enjoyed today's little journey down Planning Lane. What we'll do is we'll split it here and welcome you back. Come back next time to join us for the second half of planning and preparation for Nick and Joe's Land Rover and our adventures. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Okay, moving swiftly on to the interior then. Moving on to the electricals. What to do about the roof. I've certainly earned this coffee with the amount of talking I've done.